Hey y'all, this is something I've been meaning to do for quite some time now. I just really haven't had the time or the opportunity to do it. I've always been a bit of a storyteller, and while I'm not saying my life has been super interesting or anything like that, because I don't know, parts of it have been, parts of it haven't. Um, I just, always felt like maybe one day I would, record some of the observations I've had over the years, and maybe other people would get a chuckle out of them. Um, I'm gonna go with my screen name that I already have on my channel, C Schnoz, because as you can see, I have a bit of a honker on me. Used to get a little bit of ribbon from it when I was growing up. I was a football player, and I was an offensive lineman. I'd line up, and people would start yelling that I was offsides because of my nose. So, some people still call me that. Just a little, bit of personal history, if you will. Anyway, I grew up in the '80s primarily in a coastal town in southeastern Texas. I'm going to try to be vague on some details and obviously some names, so as to protect the innocent, if you will. But anyway, the neighborhood I grew up in um, wasn't exactly super low class or anything, but it was definitely working class, if you will. We had an interesting cast of characters of different ages, and one of those characters was a year younger than I was, and he's just one of those kids that had a bit of a mouth on him, and boy, he was fast. And as you can see, I'm a bit of a husky lad, and always have been since probably about the age of 11 or 12 when I discovered that the kitchen was a wonderful place. Anyway, this particular individual had a knack for just running his mouth and running off because pretty much no one in the neighborhood could catch this guy, and used to just piss us all off to no end. Well, the neighborhood I grew up in had ditches, and being a coastal town, we got quite a bit of rain. And while the drainage pumps at the time were pretty good, the city didn't really turn them on unless there was a real need to, flooding or whatnot. So anyhow, lots of times the ditches would be full for quite some time, which hey, we thought was great because we'd get on our buckets, rubber boots, nets, whatever. We go crawfishing and catch crawfish and sometimes eels and other little fish that were in those ditches. But anyhow, on this particular day, I can't even remember the circumstances that would even led up to this moment. And I'm not saying that we're going to go over two moments, and I'm not going to saying that these things happen because I'm just so awesome or whatever. I still can't honestly believe I managed to pull these couple of things off because Lord knows I'm no super athletic person or anything. Just sometimes I think it's your day, and on these two occasions, I guess it was mine. Um, so, person that with the mouth that could run had managed to get about 10 or 15 feet away from myself and one of my friends, who was also a fairly quick guy, but even this guy couldn't catch him. Uh, anyway, we were like a year older than this guy. This is probably about 1986, so I would have been like around 11 or 12. It was late summer, I have an August birthday. Anyhow, it had been raining, ditches were full, and we were in front of my house. The neighborhood I grew up in, everyone carried slingshots, knives, BB guns, whatever. Again, this is the '80s, back when parents just kind of let you do whatever the hell you wanted. And, it was like nowadays where you can't go down the street without texting your parents every 20 minutes. Back in those days, it was like, hey mom, we're gonna go play in the abandoned mine shaft. Okay, dinner's at 6. So anyway, different time. My dad had given me a slingshot, and I happened to have this slingshot in my back pocket, and I had a pretty large rock in my pockets. And this guy, not only was he running his mouth and staying far away from us, but today he decided to moon us. I'm not talking just to quick drop your pants. I'm talking full on drop your drawers, pull them down to your ankles, butt crack and nutsack hanging out in the breeze. And he was just sitting there, you know, shining his hiney for the whole world to see in front of God and everyone. This is probably, I don't know, 6:30 in the evening in late summer, so still plenty of daylight. And I had a bit of a temper as a young man, and again, I couldn't do this again if I tried 100 times in a row. But that day, I don't know if God smiled upon me or what. Just maybe even he'd had enough of this little guy's mouth. I reached in my back pocket, had the slingshot, and I had a big old rock in my front, and I just just threw that thing back, and I hit him square in the ass. I mean, hard, and he was probably 10, and I mean this thing. I mean, it was obvious that it was not a pleasant sensation, and he goes down, house of cards, middle of the street, crying. I'm talking ugly crying, pants around his ankles, just sitting there, and of course, my friend and I are doubled over laughing because this is hilarious. Because Lord knows this guy's had it coming for a long time. So anyway, my neighborhood had a lot of older folks in it, including my parents. My parents were older when I was born, so I had a lot of World War II vets. I was an accidental child, Daddy was 50, mother was 46 when I was born. So one of these old cotters comes down the road, like his 1975 F-150. Here's this cat, and he ain't even noticing, he ain't even moving, even trying to get up. And this old boy just starts honking the horn, and this dude ain't even moving. So, just to add insult to injury, I kind of looked at my buddy, and I think we thought the same thing. And like I mentioned earlier, the ditches were full. So I grabbed under the armpits, and my buddy grabbed the ankles, and we just right into the ditch. Splash. He even moved. I mean, I guess he was hurt pretty bad from the slingshot, but again, hilarious. So, old man just kind of smiled and just drove on down the road. That was incident 1. Incident 2 proved that incident 1 did not teach our little quick-mouthed and quick-footed friend a lesson. So, virtually the same location in front of my house. Again, I said there were ditches in my neighborhood. There was a fence, chain link fence my parents had. They had 2 sections of yard on either side of the driveway. The section that was in front of the actual house had a utility pole, telephone pole, light pole, whatever you want to call it, in front of the big wooden, and it was like fences here, the ditch sloped down, and probably about 2 or 3 feet from the fence was where the flagpole was. Utility pole. So, again, don't remember the circumstances. This was probably not super long after incident number 1. And, he's running his mouth, and he's just on the other side of the pole from me. Again, quick as a cat. I'm trying to get my hands on him, and I can't touch him. But, the way we're standing, we're a little bit wider than the utility pole, and he's standing virtually mirroring, my stance. And again, I don't know if the Almighty had enough of his mouth that day, but I happened to look down at his right foot, which was across from my left, and it had been a damp day and rained earlier in the day, so the ground was slick, and something just the spark of inspiration, if you will, and I reached down, and for a big boy, I'm fairly quick with my hands. And I reached down and grabbed his right ankle and yanked. And I was considerably larger than him, probably 30 pounds. And at that point, I'd already started, filling out, lifting weights. So I was, pretty stout guy. And so on the other side, there was his other foot. And I just, again, had a moment of inspiration. Reached around, got one foot on one side of the pole, one foot on the other. There's his wishbone, if you will, in between. And so, again, he's crying, holding himself. This time it's his balls, and he's just rolling around the ground, ugly crying. And I think after that was kind of the end of his, he was starting to learn that, sometimes you can't always run your mouth and get away with it. Because, it will have consequences. And I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only guy who got him, because he did this kind of crap all the time. But, it sure was nice to have a couple of times where, because Lord knows, for every one time I got him, this guy outran me, this is real high tech production, probably 5 or 10 times. But it was pretty funny to get a little revenge and see this guy ugly crying from running his mouth. So just thought maybe this would be a funny story for some of y'all, and put it on my channel, and people like it, I'll post some more because there's plenty more on the shelf where that came from. All right, well, this is C Schnoz, if you will, signing off, and y'all have a good one.